Hello, this is Tom and Chris. We're those film guys.
And welcome to our review of The Dark Knight Rises.
Just to let you know, all the reviews on this channel will be spoiler free, so don't worry about us ruining the plot. But now on to the review. The Dark Knight Rises is Christopher Nolan's third and final Batman film in his series, and before we talk about it, I think we should say what we thought of the other two films. My thoughts on Batman Begins are basically that it's a big budget independent movie, which tells a very unique story and a side of the character we haven't seen before. The Dark Knight, in my opinion, changed the way we saw the superhero genre and redefined it.
And I found Batman Begins personally to be the strongest in the series, in that I thought it was a strong character study on both Bruce Wayne and Batman. And as a reboot, it created a very new atmosphere to the character we hadn't seen before. The Dark Knight, while showcasing the best villain, in my view, it seemed to neglect the character of Batman, but it did still prove to be a very revolutionary and dark, gritty film.
Yeah, and no doubt the series has been based on realism and a dark edge, and has had a dark edge to it. But I feel The Dark Knight Rises, in terms of its tone, is probably the darkest of the three.
I agree, yeah. It certainly felt like the bleakest of the three, in that the comic relief and humorous moments are really toned down and are pretty much absent throughout the second and third acts of the film. I suppose this was necessary to conclude the trilogy, but to really get into this review, I think we should say what we thought was the best thing and the worst thing in this film, starting with you, Tom.
Okay. I'd say one of the best things about the film is Nolan's choice for Bane. Tom Hardy can act without the audience seeing his whole face, and it's all through his eyes. And that's what I think Nolan picks up on, which is fantastically terrifying. And he pulls it off really, really well. You can see all that menace and just everything accumulating. It's fantastic to watch.
When Gotham is ashes, you have my permission to die.
The worst thing, however, for me, was an underdeveloped Miranda Tate, played by Marion Cotillard.
Yeah.
Because she did seem to be that afterthought of the film, as it was so focused on Bruce Wayne's emotional state. And as such, some of the side characters were a bit neglected in terms of screen time.
Yeah, I can agree with that. On point with thing you said about Miranda Tate. For me, this is where I'm kind of torn, because my favourite thing in the film can also be seen as my least favourite aspect. There's a scene that is taken directly from the Batman comic Nightfall, which to me was perfectly replicated on screen and was very well acted by Hardy, like you said. However, my worst part about the film is that this scene and dramatic moment occurs a quarter of the way into the film, and as such I kind of lost a bit of the dramatic tension and investment in both characters involved due to its placement in the film. I felt that perhaps if this was moved to the end for the finale, it would have posed a very good character-driven, emotional and exciting ending, other than the ending that we were given.
But the whole middle of the film, so everyone plays their part and everyone does their focused jobs.
Yeah.
And I think that you could argue that it's not focused on Batman, but that isn't really the entire point of the film. It's all about rising above your physical and mental limitations to achieve something that you wouldn't have necessarily achieved if you hadn't reached that next step, to overcome an obstacle.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, and certainly The Dark Knight Rises takes on a very almost Rocky-like character journey with Batman. But I feel that Batman himself in the costume wasn't focused on nearly enough in this film. It's not until about 40 minutes into it that we get our first glimpse of Batman. And I know this kind of fits into the story in that Bruce Wayne, was Batman, has been gone for 8 years. But after that appearance, we don't see him again until the very end of the film, and it seems to be very much more a Bruce Wayne story than a Batman one.
Which I think works incredibly well for the film, and it does bring it full circle in terms of an emotional way, and ties the third film into the first in the series, which is Batman Begins.
And speaking of coming full circle, we also get given a new villain in Bane, who ties in with Bruce's past, and we already touched on that Bane was your favourite thing in the film, but is there anything else you wanted to say about the character?
What I would say, he's very much a different villain.
Yeah.
And there will be comparisons between him and the Joker, but I think they're unwarranted somewhat, because the two of them are completely different villains that you have to look at in different ways. One is focused on anarchy and chaos, and Bane is set on destruction and annihilation, and that everything must be destroyed.
And with Bane, he does seem to be a very much more physical force, in that Batman has met his physical match rather than his mental one, which we've seen in the past films with the likes of the Joker. I feel that Bane was necessary to conclude this series. I thought he was a good choice for the villain. And I did like the fact that he tied in with the previous villains, which helped to anchor this film as the final instalment.
And alongside Bane, we have the anti-hero and femme fatale Selina Kyle, or as she is most well known, Catwoman. This is despite her never being mentioned as Catwoman in the film. I know your feelings towards Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman from the Tim Burton's Batman Returns. So what did you think of Anne Hathaway?
This was one of my most unsure points going into the film. Anne Hathaway portrays a more realistic take on the character, and it's a lot more close to the comics, in that she is a cat burglar and does not possess any supernatural cat powers that we got with Michelle Pfeiffer. I was unsure going in, as I do really like Michelle Pfeiffer's portrayal, and I felt it couldn't be topped for a long time. But in many ways, Hathaway stole the show for me, and I felt myself almost treading water in between scenes to see more of her character. Unfortunately, like many other characters in the film, her character seems to be dropped in the second act, and I would have liked to have seen a lot more of her.
You and your friends better batten down the hatches. Because when it hits, you're all gonna wonder how you ever thought you could live so large and leave so little for the rest of us.
My thought, in terms of comparison to Michelle Pfeiffer, anything is better than the Tim Burton Catwoman. But the Selina Kyle in this is very, very good. And what people did with Hathaway, how they viewed Hathaway going into it, is the sort of thing people did with Heath Ledger as the Joker. Can he really play the Joker? Can she really play Catwoman? And yes, she can. She plays her brilliantly. So, we move on to our final thoughts, and I think The Dark Knight Rises wraps up the trilogy nicely and is a proper trilogy where the third film is tied with the first. And I will go this far as to say, like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Batman trilogy will be classed as a perfect trilogy.
Okay, well, I felt that in this film, certainly acting-wise, it was perfect, and the scale of the film is to be commended. And I like certain scenes in the film. However, I came out of this film a bit disappointed. I'm not sure whether that was my expectations, but I felt that the film kind of broke away from its main focus on Batman and many of the other characters we've come to care about through the other two films. I didn't think they were effectively juggled in towards the middle of the film, and I kind of lost a bit of investment in them. And the film seemed to be too mired in social commentary rather than being first and foremost a Batman film.
See, the thing is, it is all about expectations. Don't go into the film expecting a Batman film where Batman goes and just beats people up, because it is a lot more than that. It's got so much depth in terms of the layers of the characters and their emotional and your emotional investment in them. And like you said, a lot of social commentary. And it is, more than anything, a Bruce Wayne movie.
So those are our thoughts on The Dark Knight Rises. We hope you enjoyed this review.
Yep, but there are a lot of things that we couldn't cover. So if you want to check out a more in-depth review of this film, as well as many other films, please check out our YouTube channel. The link is on the bottom of the screen.
This review is just a teaser of what is to come on Source TV, and we will have many other reviews that will be regularly released at the start of the new academic year. So please check those out.
Yeah, and until next time, thanks very much for watching, guys.